Many people view being laid off around the holidays as the worst time of year to lose your job. And whether you're someone who's recently lost their job in the month of November or October, or you're someone who's lost their job during the holidays in the past, I kind of want to help you reshape your thinking around this and really help you to understand why losing your job around the holidays is typically the best time for you to actually lose your job, and what I think you should do during that time to make the most of the following year. So is there's been no shortage of news articles and news information that companies have been doing mass layoffs during 2025. We saw it happen all year, and then we saw this humongous culmination during the months of October and November, where we saw companies laying off employees in the thousands. We saw it with Amazon, we saw it with Verizon, we saw it with HP, and I'm sure that there will be more to follow. Now, typically, whenever we hear about these types of layoffs, especially like right around the corner from Thanksgiving and Christmas, we typically look at companies as being these cold and shallow and, just soul sucking entities that do not care about humanity. But the reality of the matter is that they really don't care about you. And at the end of the day, your employment with any company is pretty much a contract. You provide them time and your services, they provide you money. It's that simple. I know sometimes it's easy to get that misconstrued by the relationships that you build with your peers, your employees, or, all of the rah rah team building, stuff and all the culture talk that you hear with companies. But the only culture when it comes to, big companies in America is a capitalistic culture. It's all about capitalism. It's all about how much you can generate, how much you can make for yourself, and how much the companies can make for their shareholders. So let's not be disillusioned. Now, getting to being laid off, or getting to the point of being laid off, I want to again go over three reasons why being laid off by any one of these companies, especially during the holidays, is the best time of year. Reason number one is going to be that typically around the holidays is when most people take off anyway. So unless you're working in some type of retail environment where your business typically sees a high influx of customers, like if you work in a mall or if you work at a clothing store, any kind of retail business, unless you're in one of those like fields, typically holiday season is a big slowdown for most companies, especially if you work a white collar job, if you work in any kind of office setting, in any office capacity, if you work in real estate, even if you work in like education. Most major companies start to really shut things down from an operational perspective around the holidays because they know this is when most children are out of school. If they're in grade school, this is usually the time of year where if kids are in college, they're able to come home and visit family. And so people typically view the months of November, like the end of November all the way to the beginning of the new year, as almost like months where people are kind of coasting. You're kind of coasting through that month. And most of your peers, if not yourself, are going to take that time off anyway. And so there's really not a lot of, I guess, productivity lost during that time because you were going to be off. And, you can actually use that time, use those months, that month and a half, or that whatever the rest of the year is, depending on when you actually got laid off. You can actually now use this time to kind of reevaluate what's going on without feeling the pressure of just a, fast moving work climate, right? Like the kind of one that you would feel maybe during the second or the third quarters of the year. Usually during the second quarter of the year, that's when people are really trying to execute on whatever their first quarter vision was or whatever their beginning of the year vision was. Usually people are trying to flesh that out in the second and third quarters. And usually by the second quarter in many major companies, that's when they're trying to figure out, okay, are we seeing success or are we not seeing success? And usually this is where evaluations begin to happen. By the time third quarter comes around, that's when, I think a lot of companies are starting to look at where they need to course correct, where they need to adjust. And when you get laid off, in the middle of that type of environment, like if you get laid off in an April or a May, or even like in August, and now you're having to look for a new job, it can feel kind of daunting because let's say you get laid off in August. And let's say you do need to take that week or that month to regroup. to kind of get your bearings, first deal with the psychological impact of being laid off, and then put yourself in a mental frame of mind to get back out there. By the time you kind of get back out there and you're searching, you're really coming towards the end of the third quarter and going into the fourth quarter. And most people know that hiring is usually very slow during the last quarter of the year. And so, I think being laid off like right before the holidays is perfect because you get pretty much the entire holiday season to regroup, regather. You're going to be spending that time with your family anyway. So you have the emotional support from your family, and you can actually, take that time to gather your bearings so that by the time the new year rolls around and January rolls around, you've dealt with all of the emotional effects, you've dealt with all the trauma of being laid off, and now you should be in a better mental space to really kind of tackle the year on a strong note. So that's the first reason. The first reason is because you get time that you would have been taking in most cases anyway. The second reason why I think being laid off at the end of the year is a good thing is because it forces you during the peak spending season to reevaluate how you spend. Now, the reason why a lot of people view being laid off at the end of the year as a really bad thing, in my opinion, is because the first thing that comes to mind when you get laid off, especially right before Thanksgiving, is how little you're going to be able to spend during the Christmas season. But now you know that you can't take that extravagant vacation. Now you can't spend $1,000 on electronics and video games. Now you can't spend $2,000 on clothes and handbags and stuff. And you pretty much know that you need to count your coins. And in my opinion, I think this is a good thing, actually. I think it's a good thing. It forces you into a position where you now have to reevaluate how you spend as opposed to just frivolously spending because you have the income. And the reality of it is that 9 times out of 10, even people who have jobs are typically living above their means anyway. I mean, you know what they say, a job is just an acronym for just over broke. And so honestly, in my opinion, taking the time during the holiday season to kind of pull back on spending and become more cost conscious is a better thing. You might have saved yourself thousands of dollars in unnecessary holiday spending just because it seems like the thing to do, or it seems like the traditional thing to do in our society. When the fact of the matter is that whether you have a job or not, people really should be saving their coins during the holiday season and not using it as a reason to just spend money unnecessarily. Now, like I said, during the holiday season, especially when you're away from work and you're with your family, whether you're taking a vacation or you're staying local, you want to feel like you have that freedom to spend. Why? Because everyone else around you is spending. If you go to the supermarket, everyone's shopping cart is packed to the brim. If you go to the mall, everyone's got 4 and 5 bags with shoes and electronics and toys. And so you kind of get this left out feeling when you're around people spending all this money and deep down inside you feel like you can't because you were just laid off. Well, the reality of it is that most of the people spending all that money, they can't afford to spend it either. You know what I mean? It's just that we live in a society where spending a lot of money around the holidays is the thing to do. It's the way our capitalistic society has been built. And companies know this, industries know this, and this is why they build entire marketing campaigns around specific holidays, which is why Valentine's Day is really geared towards spending money on dinners and gifts and jewelry. And all of these holidays are built around consumerism. And being laid off during the holidays forces you to reevaluate how you spend, not only during the peak spending season, but it's also going to force you in a position where you have to reevaluate how you're going to spend for the upcoming year. And I think in the long run, this is going to benefit more people than not, because the habits that you build while being cost conscious from being laid off will hopefully stick around for the next time you actually do get a job. And when you do find yourself gainfully employed again, you'll be a much better financial steward of the funds and income that you make at that time. So that is the second reason why I think being laid off during the holidays is a good thing, or right before the holidays, rather. The third reason why I think being laid off during the holidays is a good thing is that during the holidays, once you get over like the psychological impact of being laid off, The holidays is a really good time to kickstart your reskilling and your retooling and your learning, right? Depending on how hard you celebrate the holidays or depending on what your family traditions are during the holidays, a lot of times there's more free time. Things start to slow down from like a work productivity perspective, as I mentioned in the first reason. And this is a really good time for you to, it gives you time, right, to retool and reskill while everyone else is chilling out. So while everyone's on vacation, you have basically a month to a month and a half to get a head start before the new year starts in learning new skills, building yourself, rebranding yourself, taking new professional photos, changing up your LinkedIn, doing all of the small things that will incrementally lead to you being where you want to be, whether that's getting a new job, whether that's kickstarting your own business, whatever the case may be. You're able to leverage the fact that everyone's distracted by the holiday season and kind of run off into the shadows and rebrand yourself so that by the time everyone returns to the corporate world, you can then reemerge as a whole new entity, right? You're with a whole new brand, and it's almost like you're a whole new person. And people will forget, by the time people come back from the holidays and they see the new you, it's like, wow, who's this new person? And that goes for anyone that you're connected to on LinkedIn, anyone that's in your professional network. This really gives you an edge, I would say, in that you're probably going to be so throttled and rattled from being laid off that you now have the ability to kind of go back, rebrand, reskill, relearn, and reemerge at the point where everyone is returning to the workforce. And, doing that is going to give you the head start. I think most people who have been laid off, it's going to give you the head start you need to position yourself for a better position within that first quarter of the year, right? And so I think, again, all these things that I'm mentioning, in my personal opinion, are a lot harder to do, pretty much at any other point in the year, right? Is it easier possibly to land a job if you get laid off, say in May, and find a new job in June? Possibly, because, it's not the holiday season and recruiters are out there looking and stuff like that. But it will be, I think, more challenging on a personal level for you to kind of take that necessary time needed to rebrand, to rethink your strategy when it comes to how you want to climb the corporate ladder, if you even choose to climb the corporate ladder. And I think you don't have to deal with the fast-paced, moving corporate world that exists in those months, right? So I think, life is all about perspective. And I know a lot of people have lost their job recently. I know a lot of people are really uncertain about their future. My recommendation is to take this holiday season, take this time where everyone's distracted with Santa and gifts and gingerbread and Christmas carols. Take this time to pull back, go into the shadows, reevaluate how you spend, reevaluate your financial situation, rebrand yourself, re-strategize, consider if you even want to be employed again, or if you want to, find your own path and, launch off into your own career and do your own thing. And then reemerge in 2026 as a new you, a much more improved, a much better skilled, a much better informed, and a much more confident you, a you that your past employer and your past colleagues will not recognize. Those are just my thoughts, and those are my 3 reasons on why I think being laid off during the holidays is better than people think it is, and what I think you should be doing during that time. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments down below, and I will catch you in the next one. Take it easy.